The other thing I suggest you doing before starting the writing process is going through your favorite film festivals and watching back the past couple of years their award-winning film. My name is Katya Alexander, and this is Pocket Change Films. In this podcast, I'm going to teach you how to make your first project with your pocket change. Then, once we've done that, I'm going to teach you how to make more and more projects and build up your portfolio. Then, once you have your portfolio, I'm going to teach you how to get budgets for your projects so you can start doing bigger and bigger things. And then, hopefully, I'm going to teach you how to make your first micro budget feature. If you've already made your first project with your pocket change, feel free to join later on in the season when I talk about the later parts of this process.
Pocket change, pocket fame, film in the swap. We'll light up the screen when we hit play in the dark. Innovation, creation on a shoestring beat. Join the journey, feel the heat in everything.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm an indie producer who's been working in this industry for 12 years. I sold my first feature to Abamarama and PBS. And then in 2022, my film Pretty Problems won the Audience Award at South by Southwest. I sold that film to IFC and it became a trending film on Hulu. I also worked on the Las Vegas Sphere, which taught me how to work on really large scales and the intersection between technology and film. I have a big passion in helping future generations join the film industry, especially people who might not have access to major resources. And that's why I made this podcast, is so people can tune in and figure out how to make their first projects with the very little resources that they might have access to. And is to help people realize that they might have access to more resources than they even thought. So check out the first episode of Pocket Change Films. This episode starts way at the beginning of the process, which is just coming up with an idea. Something that I see a lot of new filmmakers get wrong is that they'll come up with these ideas that are extremely big. There's something that's just been sort of nagging at them for a really long time. Now, those projects are definitely important to make, but they're not going to be your first project, and they most likely won't even be your second project. Potentially not even your third project. Keep that idea on the back burner and make sure that you're still developing it and working on it and keeping it in mind. Just know that it's not going to be your first project, and that's okay. There's a chance that your first couple projects aren't even very good, and that's okay too. You're going to want to get all the bad projects kind of out of your system and start learning what's working and what's not working before you sort of do your big dream project, because you want that project to be really good. So you want to make sure that you have the experience that backs up the idea. For your first project, I would have it be something very simple. Probably one location, maybe two locations, 1 to 3 actors, and something that is just contained. I usually suggest new filmmakers think about the unique resources that they have. Sometimes they might know somebody who owns a restaurant or owns a laundromat or owns an escape room, or different people who might own something, or maybe your family owns something. Maybe you know of a really cool house that's on the block and you know the person who owns it and they might let you film there. Before you even think of an idea, think of what you have access to, because it will only up the production value of your project. And let's say you're sitting there, you're racking your brain, you're thinking, I don't know anybody who owns any type of facility, and I don't really have any access to a cool house or anything like that. And that's completely fine. You can make really interesting projects within your house. You can make it take place in your house, so you have very limited work to do. You can just take your house as it is, or you can get creative. You could take all the furniture out of your bedroom and paint the walls white and turn it into a hospital room. Or you could take all the furniture out of your living room and turn it into its own studio apartment. Or if you live in a studio apartment, you can find a place to put your furniture for the day and completely transform your space. Some of the first projects that have ever deeply impressed me were actually in college. This group of filmmakers took all the furniture out of their dorms and turned it into different things. One time they turned it into a spaceship using the white walls of their hallways and the white walls of the dorm. Throughout the dorm, there were these circular lights that they would kind of frame up to look really futuristic. And then anytime there was a window, they would just VFX space outside of that window. Granted, one of the resources they had was a person on their team who knew how to do VFX. But VFX outside of a window is actually pretty simple, especially if the shot is still. So it's something that you could easily teach yourself using YouTube videos. Throughout the short, it was a very simple concept. It was just a girl listening to a voicemail from her brother. So only 2 actors, 1 live and 1 VO. And in that voicemail, you start to realize that she got the last ticket on this spaceship before Earth blew up. And this was going to be the last time she would ever hear her brother's voice. That same group later that year used tarps and fake blood to turn their entire dorm room into a slaughterhouse. It was disgusting.
The second thing, and this is the only rule, is that you cannot get out of the chair.
But the point of all this isn't just seeing that footage. It's looking at what you have and seeing what you could do with it. Could you put up tarps in your room, turn it into a slaughterhouse? Could your space look like a spaceship? Are you willing to paint a wall or two to turn the space into something else? You could turn your bedroom into a therapy office. I mean, the possibilities are pretty much endless if you're creative. But the big thing I would think about is don't have a million locations. I've made that mistake in college. I made a film that had 26 locations. It took multiple months to film and it was the bane of my existence. So don't make the mistake that I did. Just pick 1 or 2 locations and make the story interesting. You don't have to use gimmicks and all these other crazy things to make something interesting. The other thing I suggest you doing before starting the writing process is going through your favorite film festivals and watching back the past couple of years their award-winning films. Start taking note of many different things about these films. What did they look like? What was the type of content that was in the film? What was the film about? How long was the movie? How many locations were in the film? How many people were in the film? Start making notes of all these little types of things and start seeing if all the films have anything in common. Are all the films the same length? Are all the films shot on the same type of camera? Do all the films have the same sound quality? Start taking notes so that when you're doing your film, you can kind of keep these festival tips in mind so that it gives you a better chance at actually getting into a film festival in the end. The biggest mistake someone can make is they make their film way too long. Festivals rarely let in films that are more than 15 minutes long. I would aim between 7 and 10 minutes, especially for your first film. When it comes to a script, that means that your script should be between 7 and 10 pages because every page of a script counts for 1 minute on screen time. It doesn't usually turn out exactly like that, but it is a good rule of thumb in general. So right now, you would be in the brainstorming stage, right? You're trying to think of an idea using the resources you have. You're trying to think of what makes a festival film. What are the films that are really popular right now? What's working right now? And then even watching some of your favorite features and seeing what type of style of filmmaker you want to be. Do you want to work in horror? Do you want to work in thriller? Do you want to work in comedy? Have your first couple portfolio pieces be of that genre because you have full control over your initial portfolio. You're not taking money from other people. You're not taking major advice from other people. So you can start figuring out your voice in that time so that when you start taking money from people and other people's voices start to come in, you kind of already established what type of filmmaker you are. I do see a lot of filmmakers wasting time doing genres and films that they don't really like doing. And then later, when they're getting budgets to make stuff, they're only really getting budgets to make those types of films because that's what they prove to financiers that they can make. So when things are entirely in your control, do the thing that you want to do. While you're brainstorming and writing is also a really good time to start setting yourself up for the future. So this is the time that you should start building community. Now there's lots of ways to build community. For myself, I went to film school. And at film school, the thing you have access to are a bunch of students who want to work in the film industry. So I would get the chance to produce all their films. Sometimes I would second AC their films, which means I was the person who essentially put lenses on the camera. And I got a chance to work in G&E, which means I was just running power cords for the lights and putting the lights up on stands and stuff like that. It gave me the chance to try out a million different jobs. So later when I became a professional producer, I at least knew a little bit about the jobs and got a lot of respect from my crew. Also at the time, I started working in a post-production house, which ended up being one of the biggest payoffs of my entire career for 2 reasons. One, I studied about how to be a colorist, and there aren't really a lot of colorists out there. So early on, when I was trying to make money, I could at least get jobs as a colorist. The other thing it allowed me to do was start learning the skill of being a post producer. When I was really young and it was hard to convince people to give me these jobs, one of the ways I was able to convince them to do it was that they could hire me as the producer and the post producer and the post supervisor. This saved them massive amounts of money, and so it made them more willing to kind of give me a chance. So while you're brainstorming your project, those are the things I would think about. Different skills you could build so that you're an asset on any team, and different ways that you can meet people. Like I said, I went to film school, and that was a really big way that I met people, but that's really not the only way. One of the other ways that I met a lot of people was when I moved to Los Angeles, I joined a film club, which was basically a group of people that met every Wednesday and Friday. On Wednesdays, people would submit scripts so that the actors in the group could do a reading of the script and the writers of the group could give notes on the script. And if everybody loved the script, there was a whole group of filmmakers in that room. They could just make it. And then on Fridays, people would come in with their half-edited films, or sometimes their finished films, and we would watch them and we would give notes. The larger the group, the more access to resources you have, because now you have access to all of their resources as well. I would go on the internet and look for any type of film group that's in your area, any type of film club. The club that I was talking about is in Los Angeles, and it's called We Make Movies. They also have an online version because of COVID, they were able to create a way that people could join in from Zoom. So people who live outside of Los Angeles could join the club, but I do suggest joining a club where you're meeting in person, because if everybody you know is in a different state, it's much harder to make a project together, obviously. If you're in college but you're not a film student, there's probably a film club at your school. If you're living in a city, there's definitely a film club somewhere in that city. And if you're living in a small town and you've looked everywhere and you cannot find a single film club anywhere, I suggest you just try to make one. It's much harder. It's much more work. If you make a film club, that's a whole other side career that could help you in the long run. For example, in We Make Movies, you could join for free, but if you pay certain fees, you get access to way more stuff. And so the people who started that club can keep running the club because of the fees that they get. Once you join a club or find a community, or you're finding people at college, or you're just making friends, the biggest thing is to work on their sets. Make sure that you are an asset to them just as much as they're going to be an asset to you. If someone in the group has a project that's ready to go, you all band together and you make it. Somebody's the director, somebody's the cinematographer, somebody's the PA, somebody's the gaffer. You start figuring out what you need and what everybody can contribute. And seeing what everybody has. Maybe you don't have access to a restaurant, but somebody in the group does. Like I said, when you join a club, your resources become the resources that everybody has. If you don't have anybody in the group that has a camera or lights or all that stuff, in the next episode, I am going to talk about getting different resources and how to find that stuff. So while you're in the process of writing your project and developing your idea, start working on other people's sets, making yourself an asset to their lives and their teams. That way, when your project is ready to go, everybody is enthusiastic about helping you. Also, working on other people's projects gives you more set experience. You can start learning about the things that were working on other people's sets, the things that weren't working on people's sets, because you're all kind of learning together. You're sort of building your own film school, and there's going to be a lot of trial and error, trust me. The other thing that it allows you to do is, let's say you're a cinematographer on somebody else's project and you did a really good job. That could be something that goes on your portfolio. It can't go on your directing or writing portfolio, but it can go on your cinematographer's portfolio. At this point, you've built a community. You've been working on people's projects, you've been developing an idea, and now you have a script. I would bring that script to your community of filmmakers and people who are not filmmakers. That's a very big tip. Run all of your ideas by people who are not filmmakers. Filmmakers will sometimes think things are super amazing, and then you kind of show it to a Joe Schmo, and they're like, I just don't get it. The audience of your project is going to be the Joe Schmo. So you need to make sure that they like it as well. So try to get a wide range of notes, especially if you know a bunch of different people who live in different states or different environments. Try to send the script to those people as well. That way you get a really wide view. Now, granted, when you get a note, you get to decide, do I want to keep that or do I not want to keep that? Don't take every single note that you get. But if someone gives you a note, always take the time to think about it. Sometimes someone might give you a note and you're like, that has nothing to do with this project. But the fact that they gave the note means that they didn't understand what the project was. So even if you don't agree with the note, you can take the idea of it and be like, okay, maybe my idea wasn't clear enough. Eventually, your script is going to be ready. You know the script is ready when you're very excited to make it. You're reading it through and you're like, I can see exactly how this is going to go. And when you're giving it to people and they just don't have that many notes left for you, they're like, you know what? It's great. I trust the people in my community, so when they tell me I'm ready, I know that I'm ready. The other way you know you're ready is that you worked on a lot of sets. By a lot, I don't mean 10 or 20, but I do mean maybe 2 or 4. You're starting to learn how the set runs. You're starting to know how your community works, and you're starting to understand what resources you have access to and the other things that you're going to have to go get. So even if your script is ready, but you haven't worked on any sets yet and you haven't built a community, I would focus on doing that. On the next episode, we're going to talk about how to gather a crew, how to ask for resources and receive them, how to budget your project for any outside costs that you don't immediately have access to, and most importantly, how are you going to keep your costs low? Remember, you're making this with your pocket money. I'm so excited to see you on the next episode. I hope that this was helpful to you. I'm Katya Alexander, and this is Pocket Change Films. I'm going to have an outline of all this information and links to resources in the show notes. Thank you so much for tuning in.